is a Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is special. This is episode 200, recorded on August 1st, 2018. So 200 episodes. You can go to my website, walkinthepark.tv. That's a URL, that's a website, walkinthepark.tv. And you can see all those episodes, and this one will be up online very soon on my website. But mainly it's going to be shown over the next week on Pegasus, Public Access Television, Ithaca, New York, Pegasus Community Media Center. And this is a function of Spectrum Communications, Spectrum TV, and Ithaca, City of Ithaca, Town of Ithaca, and the surrounding towns that participate in various ways in getting this broadcast. Cablecast, I should say. So actually, if you want to see what's going on in all of the series and all of the schedules and so forth of our shows, you can go to our website, pegasus.webstarts.com, and go to channel 13 and see and this says the Pegasus series up there, and you can see the different shows, and also featuring some of the shows put up online or sometimes put there. So this week we're going to go to something called the Three Gorges Project. We'll start off with that, and then we're going to go over to Watkins Glen State Park and see a video I have made, and we'll see the first half of it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But the week of July 12th, it was the New York State Invasive Species Awareness Week. So there we have invasive species, or plants and animals, insects and so forth, that are come from other places and are out of control. Now, there are many plants and animals that have been brought to our part of the world and other parts of the world that were intentionally or unintentionally introduced for for whatever purpose, for ornamental or agricultural or whatever, or accidentally, and they've just become part of the landscape and worked into the ecology. Others have exploded in the landscape and caused all kinds of ecological problems, supplanting literally other plants and taking plants out that are important to the food web in the ecosystem. So that week, on the July 12th, happened to be the date, that was a Thursday, at Robert Treman State Park, there was a group of state park employees who were tabling. They were this particular group that we're going to look at, we're going to hear from, were in Upper Treman, near the beginning of the Gorge Trail, and people coming by could find out a lot about invasive species. So that's just part of their work, is education. The rest of it is actually working on eradicating invasive species in our parks and replanting with native species. So let's go find out what they were doing. Coming right up, this video. Coming right up. Okay, so I'm standing here with some folks from state parks. Are you like forces people, or?
Both. We're with the state park and we're also with the forces, called the Stewardship Corps.
Okay.
Yep. And it's we're working on the Three Gorges project that has to do with the three parks in Ithaca. It's going to be Buttermilk, Treman, and Teganic. Working in the gorges there. Doing
invasive species work, or what else are you doing there? What are you doing?
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So basically our project, the Three Gorges project, is looking to address three specific invasives: Japanese knotweed, porcelain berry, and pale swallowwort. And the people who wrote the grant have, like our boss, Becky, from the environmental field team, basically identified these species as ones that are particularly able to transfer by water. So the grant is, we're getting money from the Great Lakes Initiative, and we're trying to make sure that these species don't spread further into the watershed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to this? Or?
I think they got it covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your name is?
Adelia Baker.
Adelia?
Carlin Wakefield.
I'm Johanna Little.
Johanna Little, okay. Okay, so what are you all doing up here?
So today we are tabling, trying to raise awareness about invasive species that patrons might find in the park on their hikes or that they may just see around in the area. Several of these species are not something we have around here yet, but we tend to try to follow the protocol of early detection, rapid response, and the more people that are aware of the invasives that may be moving into an area, the better, and the more eyes we have on the ground, the better.
I heard one of you say that the emerald ash borer has now been found in Tompkins County?
Yes, so the emerald ash borer was found this past spring officially for the first time. It was found in Cornell's Arnott Forest and then also one place downtown. Those are the places that I know about at this moment. Unfortunately, because it is found in those two places or in two separate places, that means that it very well could have been here for a while undetected. And what we're going to do about it kind of remains to be seen.
All right, so I guess the city forester must be freaking out right now.
As are we.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the Three Gorges project in terms of what you're actually removing where or monitoring or whatever.
Yes. So in all the three parks, we've been mapping and monitoring all three species, but the species that we've been removing has been specifically pale swallowwort. The root system is, if you get under it, it's easy to get the root crown out, and whereas porcelain berry, the roots spread, and pulling it out manually would have detrimental impact on a lot of our native plants. So there are different ways that those are managed, but anything that we can dig out without hurting our native plants, basically pale swallowwort, we've been removing that, and we've been in every park, just about every part of each park, removing that.
Wow, that's a huge job, and if you're doing most of it manually then. So that's great, that's wonderful you're doing that. Yeah, I know. I've seen when I worked at Teaneck, there was a lot of pale swallowwort there. I worked in the headquarters building, but I went out all over the region. And right behind the headquarters building, this was 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot. And then I've since seen it down in the Gorge and other places. So it's all along the lake. Some of the lakeshore properties are pretty well covered with it. So, all right. Now, what was this this stuff here? This was
so that's the porcelain berry. So it's a look-alike to grape. So in terms of grape, looking less divided, these guys are deeply lobed, and a mulberry. Yeah, almost like a mulberry, and generally 5 lobes. And this is a relatively new invasive that they've found in this area, but buttermilk seems to be the place where this is mostly at.
Where do you find that in buttermilk particularly?
There's actually a plant. We took this clipping from a plant right up the gorge trail. So right along the Buttermilk Falls, on the right side, you'll find it growing right along the trail. Okay,
all on those steps that are going right up. Oh my gosh, I'll look for that. Oh my. So what is the concern with the porcelain berry particularly? You want to? I don't know. You want to say?
I'm not sure. I think it might just be a little stronger than our native grape, maybe. So it might take over more than the native grape does. I know they both can take over trees, but it might just be a little bit stronger.
Okay,
that
so
type of thing.
It's a climbing vine then. I didn't realize that.
Yep, it's a vine, and it has a lot. It produces a lot of berries, so it can spread pretty easily.
So we might lose a lot of our native grapevines from that, do you think? Or certainly it is not particularly good for trees to have these invasive vines on them. So maybe becoming like our version of kudzu or something.
Yeah. Also, this and also bittersweet have been predominantly like basically our kudzu up north.
Right.
And yeah, we're hoping that we can contain porcelain berry enough so it doesn't spread as much and kind of naturalize as bittersweet has. It's everywhere at this point. So it's a little bit more controlled at this point. We're trying to keep it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Got a little ahead of me there. Okay, so invasive species, we were talking about the pale swallowwort, and I had mentioned that I had seen that at Teaneck, and I got this photograph sent me by Becky Sibner, I'm sorry, leader of the environmental field team, the boss of those ladies that we just saw. And this is the woods right behind the parking lot at the regional headquarters at Teganic Falls, where I used to work. And it's been cleared out a whole lot from the pale swallower due to the efforts of this group of workers, the environmental field team and the forces and other names and so forth that they have. So now we're going to go to Watkins Glen State Park, and we're going to take a look at a video I've been working on for a long time, which is a walk through Watkins Glen. It's to go along with my book. Oh, by the way, this is Walk in the Park, walkinthepark.tv. You can see all of my episodes at my website there. So that's the show you're watching on Pegasus Public Access TV, Channel 13 in Ithaca, New York, and online at walkinthepark.tv. Okay, so we're going to go to Watkins Glen, and we're going to see the first half of this full-length video that I have made about a walk up through Watkins Glen. So let's take a look at that. We'll just bring that video right up. Coming right up here in a second. All right, working right up. The ravine called Watkins Glen is cut into the steep hillside on the west flank of the Seneca Lake Valley. It is a beautiful break in the skin of the earth, where a stream has sliced through hundreds of feet of ancient rock layers. For thousands of years, Glen Creek has roared and whispered through its confines, slowly deepening the rugged throat of rock and shaping its ledges, pools, and waterfalls. Water created Watkins Glen. Water is a stream that eroded the gorge. Water is Ice Age glaciers that bored the Seneca Lake Valley and changed the course of Glen Creek. And water in an ancient sea where sand and mud settled on the bottom, eventually to harden and become the very rocks the gorge is cut into. The magic of water and its works are what have brought people to the Glen, whether to harness water power for mills in the 1800s or to walk behind a waterfall in the 21st century. A Book of Nature is how local journalist and promoter Morval Donnells described Watkins Glen in the 1860s. Watkins Glen first opened as a privately owned scenic resort in 1863 as a result of the vision and efforts of Mr. Ells. His descriptions of the gorge and its waterfalls drew thousands of visitors from America and Europe and placed Watkins Glen alongside Niagara Falls, Saratoga Springs, and the Catskill Mountains as a Victorian tourist destination. In 1906, Watkins Glen became the first state park in the Finger Lakes region, and it continues to attract hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. Travel writer Tip Roseberry wrote in 1982, "A tour through Watkins Glen is a visit to an art gallery of nature, each picture to be savored individually before moving on to the next." In that spirit, let's consider one section of the gorge at a time, starting at the mouth of the Glen, where it opens to the Seneca Valley. We begin our hike in Watkins Glen at the main entrance down in the village. This is where we make our transition from the busy, noisy world of the 21st century to a quiet, natural world where time does not seem to matter. From here on, nature takes its own time and follows its own rhythms. What we will find is the result of seemingly endless or beginningless time unimaginably long before humans walked here or anywhere. This transition between the bustling world of the town and the serene and beautiful experience that lies ahead on the trail is abrupt. It reflects the dramatic intersection of a tortuous little stream valley and a large ancient ice valley. Glaciers set the stage for the water of Glen Creek to do its work of cutting Watkins Glen. All of the Finger Lakes are the result of the passage of enormous ice sheets over the region during the Ice Age beginning more than 2 million years ago. Glaciers covered New York State in cycles that lasted between 40,000 and 100,000 years. Each glacier melted away and was followed by a warmer interglacial period like the one we are in now. When glaciers first invaded the region from Canada, they encountered an ancient pattern of small rivers that ran north or south. The advancing ice overran the region, but much of the ice was funneled into river valleys, slowly excavating their courses into deep, steep-sided troughs. The Finger Lakes occupy 11 of those troughs. Glaciers dug out the long groove of the Seneca Lake Valley and one of the largest ancient river valleys, greatly deepening it and leaving very steep flanks that often form cliffs. After the most recent glacier melted from the lake valley more than 12,000 years ago, Glen Creek established a 7-mile route descending eastward from Sugar Hill, draining runoff from rain and melting snow. The slope and elevation of the hill are similar to what they were before the Ice Age, but the glaciers abruptly sheared off the bottom of the hill near the lake level, where the hillside descends steeply. The little valley of Glen Creek descends to where it finally drops to the lake valley. It is said to be a hanging valley, suspended above the deep trough the glaciers dug that now holds the lake. The creek plunges over the brim of the intersection between its hanging valley and the lake trough, forming waterfalls. Over thousands of years, the waterfalls have cut back into the sedimentary rocks of the hillside, gradually eroding the gorge now called Watkins Glen. The town itself is built on the gorge's disgorgements of eroded rock, sand, and silt over thousands of years, slowly filling in the south end of Seneca Lake. The main entrance to the park was called the Entrance Amphitheater by the Victorian operators of the Glen because high cliffs appear to enclose you on 3 sides. At the far end of the Entrance Amphitheater, the towering rock walls suddenly seem to merge, appearing to allow no further passage. However, a hidden portal reveals Glen Creek where it emerges from its rugged route. Entrance Cascade, the first waterfall, plunges sideways beneath the stone masonry of Sentry Bridge. To the right of Entrance Cascade and Sentry Bridge is Entrance Tunnel, your gateway to the rest of the Glen. The entrance tunnel is the first of several tunnels in the gorge. The gorge is so narrow and steep that after the park was created in 1906, the state park excavated tunnels and walkways to get around some of the cliffs in the Glen. After climbing through Entrance Tunnel, you emerge onto Sentry Bridge, directly above Entrance Cascade. The far end of Sentry Bridge provides your first glimpse into the spectacular interior of Watkins Glen. When Morval de Nels gave names to various sections of Watkins Glen, he also called some of those sections glens themselves. For instance, Glen Alpha, Glen Cathedral, Glen of Pools, Glen Arcadia, and Glen Facility. At the end of Sentry Bridge, Glen Alpha opens up to you. You peer up the stream as it runs toward you through a twisting, narrow, smooth channel of rock. Beyond, high walls of stone enclose a huge, cool cavity in the earth, threaded by the stream and waterfalls. Lush ferns, mosses, wildflowers, and small trees soften the dark gray stone. Across the gorge in Glen Alpha is an impressive cliff bisected by enormous vertical fractures. Stone has fallen from slots between these joints, as they are called. Joints are caused by compression and expansion acting on rock layers, and they are found in rocks throughout the world. Quarries often take advantage of natural jointing patterns in rock formations to remove large blocks of stone. The layered rocks of Watkins Glen and of central New York State were intensely compressed 200 to 300 million years ago, when Africa and North America collided during a time when the world's continents were aggregating into a supercontinent. The collision resulted in the rise of the Appalachian Mountains to the south and east and the Allegheny Plateau in New York and northern Pennsylvania. The huge joints in Glen Alpha and elsewhere in Watkins Glen are testimony to tremendous forces exerted on the region during that time. You can see other evidence of joints and thus the mountain building period that raised these rock layers high above sea level so long ago. Look around you and you will notice some very flat vertical cliff surfaces. These occur where rock has fallen away from one side of a joint, exposing the flat surface of the remaining face of the fracture. Follow that flat surface back to where it joins the rest of the gorge wall and you will see a joint. You will pass many more joints during the rest of your walk. In the middle of Glen Alpha, a staircase descends to a little landing lower in the gorge. Here, you are closer to the stream and in the middle of the gorge. A stupendous rocky scene rises around you. 2 waterfalls are visible upstream, and the creek follows a twisting, polished path in the other direction toward Entrance Cascade. The cliffs above are rough and broken, with a tree here and a shrub there on the slope of rocky debris at the bottom. But down along the stream, the steep, rocky flanks of the creek are smooth and winding with very few plants. This is the flood zone, scraped by sand, gravel, and stones in torrents caused by heavy rain or melting snow, one front line of downward erosion where floods deepen the glen and smooth its rock. Looking upstream, in the middle distance, there is a waterfall that plunges into a 2-part pool. It's called Minnehaha Falls, named by the early proprietors of Watkins Glen, probably by Morval than Ells. Minnehaha was the Indian maiden courted by Hiawatha in Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The poet named her after the original Minnehaha Falls near Minneapolis. On the stone stairs that climb beside Minnehaha Falls, you can see that Minnehaha Pool is heart-shaped. Years ago, an Indian legend was invented and ascribed to this unique formation. It was claimed that Minnehaha was a local Indian maiden who died, perhaps by jumping off the cliff here following the murder of her lover, her broken heart becoming this pool. But the rocks and water suggest another explanation. As you can imagine, the base of a waterfall is a place of high energy. The falling water pounds and tumbles rocks below it. During high water, rocks are washed down the gorge and become trapped in the pools below waterfalls. The energy of the water rolls stones, gravel, and sand around, and they gradually drill a pothole into the shale and siltstone of the stream bed. Over time, potholes can become quite deep. Watkins Glen is known for its dozens of potholes. The shape of Minnehaha's pothole, however, is unique in the glen. Most potholes are more or less round. Perhaps the ledge at the top of the waterfall directed flow over to the right-hand side of the pool long ago, where the falls drilled out the right-hand lobe of the heart. Over time, the ledge eroded away somewhat, and the waterfall shifted to the left, drilling the left-hand lobe to create a double pothole in the shape of a heart. At the top of the stairs above Minnehaha Falls, you enter Cavern Gorge, so called because it is narrow and dark, almost like a cavern without a ceiling. At the back is Cavern Cascade, the first of 2 waterfalls you can actually walk behind. There is a reason in the rocks why you can walk behind Cavern Cascade. On the way toward the waterfall, the rock wall left of the trail is concave or hollowed away from you. The wall on the opposite side of the gorge is hollowed as well, at the same level. If you look more closely, you can notice a thin horizontal layer of crumbly rock in the middle of the hollow. This is shale, which is easily broken apart by the freezing and thawing of groundwater flowing through joints and between rock layers. The rocks above and below this layer of shale are siltstone, which is harder and has fewer cracks into which water can percolate, and consequently is much less susceptible to frost. The shale layers are the weak zones in the cliff, allowing the elements to erode the cliff at this level more rapidly all around the gorge. It is this hollowing in the wall that permits you to stand behind the waterfall. Cavern Cascade is at the head of a little section of gorge. Indeed, most sections of the glen have waterfalls at their upper ends, because waterfalls have cut them in the first place. There once may have been a pothole at the base of Cavern Cascade being drilled by the force of the waterfall swirling stones, gravel, and sand. If so, the downstream rim of the pothole eroded away long ago. Indeed, Cavern Cascade may have been located back at the staircase where Minnehaha Falls is today, and it may have drilled successive potholes back into the hill, leaving narrow Cavern Gorge behind. This is the way most of Watkins Glen has been formed, by the force of water using stones and grit to drill potholes in the bedrock over thousands of years. In the 1800s, visitors ascended the long stairs to climb above Cavern Cascade. After the state took over Watkins Glen in 1906, the spiral tunnel was cut, and a spiral staircase built inside the cliff that takes you right above Cavern Cascade. Walking behind the falls and up the spiral tunnel is the most memorable spot in the Glen for many visitors. Once you emerge from the spiral tunnel, a new section of Watkins Glen opens up to you. It was called Glen Obscura before the state park was created because the trail climbed out of the gorge via the still existing cliff path up to Point Lookout and bypassed the Glen Obscura section. In the 1800s, you could only see Glen Obscura from a footbridge over the gorge ahead. The iron bridge was built in the early 1870s, and its original ironwork is still in place today. Okay, well that's all we'll have time for today, and we'll continue this on the next episode, 201 probably. So well, it's all winding down here. I encourage you to turn off the screen and go outside for a walk in the park. And I'm going to put up this image here of Watkins Glen while we give you the credit video coming right up here. Thank you for joining me. Is a